Hey everybody, what's going on? I am Greg Sussman alongside Davis Maddock once again from DailyRoto.com as he's here to help me break down the tight ends to target and the tight ends to avoid in season-long fantasy leagues. Davis, what's happening, man?
Not much. Very excited. I actually love this topic. Tight ends are one of my favorite positions to talk about for fantasy because they can go so many different ways.
Absolutely. You go to the high end of things, the star-studded tight ends like a Travis Kelce, a George Kittle, or you take a shot and you go a little bit lower. We're going to be all across the map on today's Hurry Up. So let's start, Davis, at the very top, where you're targeting the best, and that is Travis Kelce.
Yep, Travis Kelce, first round draft pick, pretty much no matter the format. In tight end premium leagues, I actually would take him over any wide receiver. So, after those first five running backs, I would take him at the sixth pick overall in a tight end premium league. We have him projected on Roto Experts for 50 more fantasy points than either Zach Ertz or George Kittle. Basically, have him in his own tier of fantasy football tight end. He would be a top 10 wide receiver if he was at the wide receiver position. We sort of expect Kansas City's offense to regress a little bit, but we don't expect Travis Kelce's role to regress. So, he is really about as safe as it gets in the first round this year in fantasy football.
What do you say then, Davis, to the people that are of the notion you don't draft the tight end in the first round, and certainly not at number 5 or 6?
Well, I would say to those people, you probably missed out on some of those amazing Rob Gronkowski seasons, some of those amazing Jimmy Graham seasons, and you enjoy picking up Ian Thomas or Chris Manhertz or Jake Butt off of the waiver wire while Travis Kelce is scoring 18 fantasy points a game.
Well, I may be going with Devontae Adams or DeAndre Hopkins in the first round. You certainly could make the case to go with Travis Kelce, as he may be the best receiver, no matter the position, here in 2019. Sticking with some of the high-end tight ends, that brings us to the Bucs' O.J. Howard. And that comes despite Bruce Arians' history of never really utilizing the tight end. But you could also make the case that he's never had a tight end with the amount of skill and talent of O.J. Howard.
And that is basically the case that I believe in. He never really has had anyone like OJ Howard. Probably the closest thing he's had has been someone like Heath Miller, like literally 15 years ago. But you look at the Tampa Bay offense and you see no Deshaun Jackson, no Adam Humphries. The backfield is going to be different with Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones being the primary running backs and no Jaquiz Rodgers being there. So there's just a ton of vacated targets for that offense. And you look at all the ways that they could fill them, you'd say, okay, well, Ronald Jones probably not going to get 90 targets. You look at Justin Watson and Brashad Perryman. Those guys probably aren't going to get more than like 45 or 50 targets. So when you just do the numbers game, you see there's got to be at least 100 targets here for OJ Howard if he stays healthy for 16 games, which, we pretty much projecting most players for 16 games. And with this really vertical heavy passing offense, there's an absolutely monster season out there for OJ Howard.
It's possible O.J. Howard goes berserk this year. The targets are potentially going to be there with the loss of Adam Humphries, with the loss of Deshaun Jackson. You're going to make it up somewhere. Will it be with Deshaun? Will it be with O.J. Howard? That's a question fantasy owners are going to have to ask themselves on draft day when they are ready to pull the trigger. Now, those are the two top-end guys that you really like to target. One lower-end guy that you're targeting is also in that NFC South, and it's old, reliable Greg Olson. You said a moment ago with O.J. Howard, you're projecting most players for 16 games. Are you projecting 16 games from Olson as well?
Well, we can project Olson for 16 games, but with our rosters, we probably do not expect 16 games for him. So Olson is a guy I've invested a ton in the draft best ball championship because I love to stack Cam Newton. I think Cam Newton, obviously, as we talked about in the hurry up earlier in this week, a great quarterback to target in fantasy this year. But I think Olson is a great stack with him, and he comes at such a cheap cost. But for weekly management leagues, I probably like Olson even more than in a best ball format because he's going to have a weekly role, and then when and if he does get hurt, you just let him go back to the waiver wire from whence he came.
Greg Olson has the talent to be a top tight end. It doesn't cost you anything on draft day, so pairing him up with another inconsistent tight end, it probably will work as long as you choose right on a week-to-week basis. Now let's get to some of the tight ends that you're avoiding this year, Davis, and that has us beginning in Philadelphia, where Zach Ertz is either the second or third tight end off the board this season, and yet he's someone you're actively avoiding. How come?
So I mean, sort of similar to the OJ Howard situation, you just gotta do the math. You see that the team added JJ Arcega-Whiteside. You see that the team added Deshaun Jackson. The team added Miles Sanders. The team re-signed Darren Sproles. Alshon Jeffrey is going to be fully healthy this year. He missed time last year. Zach Ertz had like no competition for targets last year. They were rotating guys like Jordan Matthews. Nelson Aguilar was their primary wide receiver for a while. So things were super thin in the pass catching group for the Eagles last year. The exact opposite is true this year. They have a bunch of different guys that they are going to be giving targets to, including Dallas Goedert, who is another tight end, playing behind Zach Ertz that the team really likes. Basically, we have seen the best that Zach Ertz has to offer. He's now sort of on the downslope of his career, and that's not to say he's not a good player. That's not to say he isn't going to have great weeks for us on FanDuel, but just from a seasonal perspective, you can do better at the tight end position.
A lot of question marks surrounding Zach Ertz this season, and it really doesn't have anything to do with him. It just has to do with the weapons. I mentioned Deshaun Jackson. Well, he's now in Philly. Dallas Goedert, another year in, a reliable target for Carson Wentz. Will the amount of targets that we are used to seeing to Zach Ertz be there? That is what fantasy owners will have to ask themselves on draft day. Continuing speaking about the tight ends that we are actively avoiding, that brings us to the Colts' Eric Ebron. How much of this is related to Andrew Luck's uncertainty and the return of Jack Doyle?
Well, definitely part of it is to do with Andrew Luck, but Andrew Luck is going to be the ship that weighs everyone else either up or down in that Indianapolis Colts offense. Seems like he might not even be ready for Week 1 at this point, so that's obviously not great for Ebron. But even to begin with, I actually am not convinced that Ebron is even the best tight end on the Indianapolis Colts roster for fantasy because so much of his value is tied to touchdowns. He had 66 targets but 14 touchdowns last year. Jack Doyle had half as many targets as him, but played in only 6 games. I'm pretty certain that Doyle is actually going to be the more targeted tight end on that roster over 16 games. So just not super interested in what Ebron brings to the table.
Ebron was a touchdown machine last year for the Colts all season long, whether it was throwing the ball, receiving the ball, or even rushing the ball. Eric Ebron did it all. Is that repeatable here in 2019? Well, we're going to find out. Eric Ebron, someone that Davis suggests avoiding this season. One last target to talk about, and you're avoiding him, and that's Trey Burton. So Burton was a tight end target last season. That's why I got my words mixed up. This season, he's someone you're avoiding with Chicago. Why is that?
Yeah, Burton was actually someone that I liked last year, but this year I think it's pretty easy to see his targets dwindling, and they weren't even all that high to begin with last year. He ran pretty hot on the touchdowns, but you have to assume, Anthony Miller probably will take another step forward. Allen Robinson seems to be fully healthy, going to play 16 games for them this year. They added David Montgomery into a backfield that they already distribute targets towards probably Mike Davis as well, another addition, and Tariq Cohen. So I think, it's pretty possible that Burton falls down to something like 5th or 6th in the pecking order in terms of targets. And Adam Shaheen, a player that they really like, who started out last year on the designated for return injured reserve, has been fully healthy and is going to be rotating in the starting offense as well. So I think it's pretty possible that Burton ends up something like 40 or 50 targets for the course of the whole year. That's kind of his downside. And I also don't really see a great upside for him either. So he's just someone that's pretty easy for me to pass on in fantasy drafts.
Trey Burton let fantasy owners down last year with even more weapons with Chicago this year. Well, it could be another letdown season for Trey Burton. He'll always have the Philly special to his name. That's going to do it for us here on the FanDuel Hurry Up. 3 tight ends to target, 3 to avoid. Make sure you check out all of our other videos where we go through every position and let you know everything that you need to know for draft day. He's Davis Maddock. I'm Greg Sussman. Thanks so much for watching. Tomorrow on the program, Tom Vecchio joins me as we give you your MLB DFS plays of the day. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.